So at this point, without further ado, I would like to introduce this afternoon's guest speaker. For 30 years, Richard Tyler worked on, learned from, and loved the Olympics. From humble beginnings in 1991 as the first official paid staff member who was hired for the 1996 Olympic Villages team, Richard went on after 96 to lead the planning and operation of the 2002 Olympic and Paralympic Villages in Salt Lake City. From there, he served as the premier Olympic Village consultant for the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, and the Organizing Committee for the Olympic Games, the OCOGs, through the 2021 Tokyo Games. Planning, organizing, and learning has been in his blood since he was a student at Georgia Tech, where he majored in industrial and systems engineering. Richard worked all over campus, most notably with the Student Center Board, managing student activities and presenting events. He led numerous offices in his Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity chapter, and most significantly served as an officer with the National Society of Black Engineers at the chapter, regional, and national levels, planning and delivering workshops at their national conferences with as many as 5,000 students in attendance. He later earned his MBA degree in international business at Georgia State University. Richard has always sought to be in service as well. During his years in Salt Lake City, he served as the only non-Mormon and the only African-American on the Salt Lake City School Board and on the Salt Lake Housing Trust Fund. Following the 2002 Winter Games there, he led the real estate team for neighborhood development organization Salt Lake NeighborWorks, where he continued to facilitate and build diverse communities. After Salt Lake City, Richard returned to Atlanta in 2004 to work with global construction materials company Lafarge, serving as Director of Land Management and Mining Engineering across the United States and Lower Canada. Later, Richard started Richard Tyler Management, LLC, to consult for corporate and institutional organizations on land and project management. Since 2016, Richard has led corporate real estate services at the Rollins Company, overseeing more than 700 locations across North America. And almost native of Atlanta, Richard enjoys serving on the board of the PATH Foundation, that's PATH, which designs and builds trails. He enjoys counseling and ministering the youth at his church and advising his now grown adult 4 children and supporting his wife, Lori, of almost 30 years in her design business, Decorating Sense. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you our own Richard Tyler.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, good afternoon, my fellow Black Olympic organizers. And boy, wouldn't that be something, a Black Olympics. I'm envisioning an atmosphere filled with Will Smith's Summertime song. But for real, I'm Richard Tyler, and it's my supreme privilege and honor to be speaking with you today. First and foremost, I want to give a huge shout out to Wyatt Ware, Johnny Brown, Donna Fields, and the other organizers of this elite group, we the Black 1996 Olympic organizers. Their efforts and perseverance after all these years has been amazing. So could we please give them a round of applause? Thank you. Well, they invited me to be your keynote speaker for this occasion, so I'm humbled to do so. And what I want to share with you today, I'm referring to as questions have their place. You see, there's great value in asking questions, for it was just that brought us together. A few people who got inspired asked, could we bring the Olympics to Atlanta? And after, of course, tremendous effort, the answer was yes. When it came to the 96 Olympics, for some reason, I didn't even think to ask myself, is that something I could get involved in? As a recent industrial engineering grad, I had followed the traditional route, interviewing positions that would, make Fritos faster or make Pampers stronger. And I loved my major, y'all, but that was not thrilling me. So I knew there had to be something else out there. At one point, my mom even asked me, hey, why don't you go work for the Olympics? So that was the first question. The second question I turned around and asked to my tech advisor, Nelson Rogers. Did he know of any other types of opportunities? And in turn, of course, he asked me a question. How would you like to work on a project for the next 5 or 6 years? Being project oriented, I said, sounds great. But God was lining things up. So it just so happened that an alumnus had asked him to find candidates for a role he had. I got a name, a number, and instructions. The kicker was my advisor was sworn to secrecy. So I had no idea what I was going to interview for until I got to the interview. Having passed the first one, the second interview was with a successful businessman, a volunteer VP with the newly formed ACOG, Russ Chandler. He fervently wanted his first employee to be from his school at Georgia Tech. At Tech, I had worked all over campus, led in my fraternity, as you heard, Alpha Phi Alpha, and planned regional and national conferences for NSBE, the National Society of Black Engineers. So planning and operations was in my bones. And then Russ turned around and asked me yet another question. Would I be willing to listen, to learn, and to work harder than ever before? Yes, I said. And in my mind, there was no doubt that I would have this role. And in spring 1991, I became the first official hire for the Olympic Villages. And something like the 39th ACOG employee, and y'all, I got the receipts. In those early days, aspects of the village bid had to be proven out. In other words, of course, there were a lot of questions, really significant ones like how would we build and plan for a number of athletes and officials that we would not be certain of until just weeks before they arrived. And really mundane ones like how many restroom fixtures do we need? And if there's not enough, how do we add them? No, I'm serious. One of my first tasks was to inventory all the restroom facilities in Georgia Tech housing. Under Russ's guidance, he challenged me in two fundamental questions. Could I think critically and could I deliver presentations? And in my initial role as his executive assistant, excuse me, he mentored me in working to answer these questions for myself. He constantly challenged me to explore critical questions on each and every assignment. And he had me deliver almost all of the Olympic Village presentations to audiences from all over the world. As we began planning, of course, we began to track what else? Questions that needed to be explored and answered in order for us to deliver the Olympic Villages. In my next role as planning manager, I worked to coordinate our planning across all the functional areas. And I also developed relationships with all of our immediate neighbors, from Coca-Cola to Randall Brothers Lumber to little old ladies on 10th Street with whom I had a lot of tea. There were always questions, of course. What are your concerns? What are your needs? What are your plans during the games? Sometimes we encourage them to make alternate plans other than being there. I had the role of asking questions across all the functional areas. Who's responsible for what? When and where does handoff occur? And what if? My other boss and mentor, Steve Cattell, encountered me with two additional fundamental questions. Could I learn to write and communicate effectively? And could I learn to manage and supervise people really well? He would place new hires under me for a time, allowing me some opportunity to orient them and to develop my own skills. He challenged me to write in detail our operations plans and how we would deliver what we needed to the athletes and officials and explanations with our own colleagues. Operations plans, of course, came with big questions. What if we had a foodborne illness? What if the entrance to the transport mall is compromised? What if all that fancy technology like hand geometry access control fails? As we approached the games, I became deputy director of the villages. And true to Russ's promise to me, the experience involved an enormous variety of work. And I learned and did more there in 5 years than I can imagine doing anywhere else in 10. And what was great about our Olympic Village team is that we would have such a huge diversity. Hungarians and French and Spanish and Africans and Hispanics, and of course, us. Running the torch 1/10 of a mile from Northside Drive to 10th Street was a thrill. This is my torch relay t-shirt, by the way. It still fits, I'm happy to say. Steve Cattell secretly purchased that torch for me after the games. But who was I to run the torch? On media day at the village, I rushed to the scene at the new North Avenue Towers to confer with alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, with new building plans in my arms. A suspicious package had been found in a van in the garage with a note, and it said, "You found this one, you won't find the rest." At some point being there, my question became, why am I standing here in front of some buildings that might blow up? Meeting celebrities at the international premiere of Eraser. Vanessa Williams, my high school crush, James Caan, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Who knew he was so short? The devious privilege of participating and ushering out a media celebrity, a one Miss Katie Couric, who had come to do a piece on the Village, but acted so rude and disrespectful, we were not having it. That was fun. And as a side note, I got to do it again in 2002. Question, what was wrong with her? Lastly, and most importantly, while in Inforum, I walked past and chatted with a young lady almost every day. I finally asked her out, and she answered yes to that and many more questions down the line. Fast forward, we were planning our wedding during the Olympics. 31 years later, Lori Ramsey Tyler, who worked at both the Atlanta and Salt Lake Olympic Villages, is still the love of my life. What if I had chosen that job with GE in Princeton, New Jersey, instead of the Atlanta Olympics? The 96 Olympic Village project was immediately and obviously an incredible fit for me, but it also became my passion. For the next 20 years, I would go on to serve as consultant for the IOC, for various big committees, for OCOGs, from Canada to Asia, from Europe to South America. It was a fun side gig that also afforded me to have my wife and some of my daughters accompany me around the world. You see, there is a place for questions, and I want to encourage us all, no matter what stage of life we're in, to continue to ask them. Ones like, what is our purpose and our passion? What can we do to manifest that passion? And how can we use it to impact other people? Let me end by echoing a phrase that I coined as we went through these Olympic experiences. This would all be easy if it weren't for people. But the flip side of this is this, and what we did and what you did would not be possible if it weren't for people. As for the 96 games, we did it, you did it. We, in fact, were all over the games in big ways and small, and should be so duly recognized. And I applaud Just Us Friends for its founding and continued honorable labor of love to fellowship and catalog the efforts of we, the people of color, of the 1996 games, and for asking the question, what about us? It will be amazing to ultimately read and review the stories and videos included in this work. Many of us will be smiling at the faces we knew, and some we never knew, but all of who played such an integral role in implementing one of the most successful Olympic Games in history. Thank you very much. That's a long time ago, y'all.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Richard,
Oh, that's nice.
for sharing.
Oh,
Thank you.
fabulous. Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you for
Excellent.
sharing.
Very good.
Love the story.
Brings
you.
back some great memories there, sir.